Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar event. This is Joshua, and I'm going to be your presenter for today's event. We're here to talk about custom account groups in accounting. The presentation will go from 11 to 11:20. If the topic may not even go that long, it may be less than that, but we won't go any longer than that. If you have questions, I'll be happy to stick around and see what I can't do to answer those. We do ask that you simply keep the questions on our topic at hand here, on custom account groups, and we'll see what we can't do to get those answered. You may, of course, type those into the questions portion of the webinar at any time. It is just me, however, and I will do my best to keep an eye on those questions. I'll repeat those, the question for everyone's benefit here, and then we'll see what we can't do to get that answered. May ask you to contact support if it's a question about your specific data. It's not because I don't want to answer it, it's simply because I need more information, okay, or we do. If you've seen what you came to see on the webinar event, you may choose File and Exit, Leave Webinar, or just close out of the control panel. Thank you in advance for attending. If you have not attended a webinar event before, if you click the little red arrow at the top of your control panel sidebar there, that minimizes the webinar control panel if you've got a single monitor set up here, and it'll allow you to get a full visual view of the presentation here. Or if you've got a dual monitor set up, just go ahead and drag that over to your second desktop just to get it out of the way. We're going to be working with version 19.16.0 today. This is our current version of Church Windows. Hopefully everybody can see my line there, my highlighted line. The recording of this particular event will be available on our YouTube channel by no later than this coming Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. So just an FYI for those who have never attended one before, if we go to youtube.com/churchwindows, that'll take you to our YouTube channel where we've got all kinds of movies and recordings and things of our previous webinar events. Here the playlist has them separated by module, by version. There's all kinds of ways you can access these, and there's even an ability to search. Use this resource. It's here. There's no charge for it. It's available 24/7 and can probably offer some insight, so other training on other events that we may not be hosting an event for here anytime soon. Also, our workbook today is going to be covering Accounting 201 or A201, pages 6 through 10. If you have the Church Windows accounting workbooks, you can follow along with that. That's what I'm using. If you don't have a workbook, you can, of course, get those from the Church Windows website in our shop. They are... if you learn by reading and seeing, screenshots rather than by this, format, then the workbooks might be helpful. So, all right, we're in accounting now. A custom account groups feature essentially allows us to select a specific grouping or specific accounts for reporting purposes and assign a name to them or a name to the list. So when you run a report, all you see on that report is just those accounts, none of the others. Okay? So to access our custom account group screen, we would simply go up to Manage Accounts at the top left, and then right below that to the right, let me kind of steer some focus again. Right here, Custom Account Groups. Let me draw an arrow up at that, and there we go. There's our custom groups, and that's where we would set those up. Okay? Once we click on Custom Account Groups, it opens our Custom Account Groups screen. We've got, split screen here essentially. We've got our account groups list on the left. We've got our account list on the left, our account groups on the right. Excuse me, I'm getting my lefts and rights mixed up today. So in order to set up a group, you would simply click the plus sign here in the upper right, and it opens up and allows us to enter a name for our new report grouping. So we're going to call this something like Office Expenses, and then we simply click OK. So we now notice that the one called Office Expenses populates in my list here in the upper right. So now what we simply need to do is steer our focus over to our account list on the left, and then we simply either, that's a search field up there, so if I click in there and I type in something like office expenses, there we go, office expense, I can choose that. Once I highlight a single account, this really is useful if you're kind of randomly scattered in your chart of accounts. I click the right facing arrow, and we now notice that it adds the one called office expense to my account group list on the right. Okay. The nice thing about this, and I like to point this out as well, is if we notice down here in the bottom left, it says hold Shift or Control keys to select multiple items. So if you do have accounts either grouped together or not, as the case may be, so right here we've already added office expenses. So probably most of these that are listed under our administration subtotal here would be added to our group, but we've already added office expense. So I can highlight, say, bank fees at the top and hold down my Shift key and select miscellaneous office expenses, and it selects the group of them, and I can simply click the right facing arrow to move them all over. Okay? Or if you've got random accounts, you can highlight one and then use your Control key and just simply go through the entire list of accounts and just select your random accounts. Perhaps they aren't all in a subtotal together. Okay? This is helpful for like when we've got when I get a call from a church and I'm on my support calls and they say, hey, I've got committees that I want to set up specific, say, reports for that only shows them their accounts. This is the only way to do that, okay, is to set up these custom groups. Again, so I've seen databases from users where we come into this account groups list and we click the down arrow or on their reports on the custom account groups tab. I'll see dozens of custom account groups because it's the only way to select random or isolated accounts. Okay. Yeah, and these tabs for custom account groups show up everywhere on our accounting report screens to choose. Okay, and these can always be changed. As I always like to tell folks, even again on my support calls, I share a lot of my experience that I have on support calls on these webinars, is unless you need to add accounts to the custom account group or take accounts away, you never need to touch it. You set it up and you never have to touch it again. Okay? So once the group is set up there, it's available to reselect ad nauseum forever until you either need to change it or the group is no longer needed. Okay? So again, use this. I'm going to show you more about how this works when we go to our actual report and see how this does this or how these work. But we see here that we've got a list of other ones in the list. So we've got mission grouping and we've got trustees accounts. There's no save here. So notice here under my trustees accounts, I have other different types of accounts here. Okay. So here's my office expenses, and if I choose mission grouping, it shows even more different accounts. Okay? So again, here's one of the common ones I see a lot or answer a lot on support calls is, a church says, hey, a user calls me and says, hey, Josh, I want to run my treasurer's report, but I only want to run it for my budgeted accounts. And so there's no option under our treasurer's report to run our treasurer's report for budgeted accounts only. Let's go over to reports here, financial, treasurer's report. And I just ask folks sort of to look around here and I go, is there anything on this screen that says for budgeted accounts only? There's not. Sure, you can limit your treasurer's report to say accounts that are linked to a specific fund, for example, but that's not going to help us in this case. Okay? So once we get to our treasurer's report, this is just one example. You would make the selections for your period. You could include or omit accounts with zero balance. Then we're going to go up to our custom account groups tab, and we'll simply put a check mark in the box next to our office expenses, and we will click print. Well, that wasn't a good example because those accounts don't look like they have activity for the current year. So let's include our accounts with zero balance. There they are. Okay, so notice this treasurer's report that we've just created only includes the expense accounts or the accounts that we've linked to this particular account group. Nothing more, nothing less. I can intermingle them. I could have added assets to this group too, liabilities, funds, income, expenses, anything to a particular group. But since, of course, our treasurer's report only reports on income and expenses, any assets, liabilities, or funds that I had linked to a particular this group would not appear here, of course. They would show up on, say, something like my balance sheet. Okay? And the other way I encourage users to look at it is that if, again, you look at our treasurer's report options screen, nowhere on this window other than fund can we choose a single account or a range of accounts. So unless, again, the accounts are all linked or related to one particular fund, the only way that we can isolate specific accounts on any accounting report is to use this custom account groups feature. So if we go up to, if we say look at another report, for example, balance sheet, similarly, we have another a tab called custom account groups. If we go up to, say, worksheets and list chart of accounts, again, we've got custom account groups. So if I choose, say, just trustee accounts, include accounts with zero balances, and click print, it should only bring up those accounts that are linked to that custom group. Okay? So custom account groups are very powerful. One of the things that's important here to understand also, sorry, I guess I should have covered this before when we were talking about setting them up, but that's okay. If we go back to custom account groups and we say we choose our office expenses, and I go down here and I go, okay, I want to add, like in this case, we're considering our church administrator's compensation part of our office expenses or our administrative secretary. If I try to choose something like one subledger, in this case like church administrator salary, and I click the right-facing arrow to add it, it says when adding a subledger account, you must add the entire ledger. So would you like to add the church administrator salary and benefits, and it's all its ledger accounts. So yeah, it's not going to allow me to isolate just one subledger account. It requires that I add the entire ledger. That's kind of the purpose of those ledgers is we are wanting them to report together always. They're very hard to split up. If you do need to separate these for reporting, then we would advise removing the ledger-subledger relationship and using subtotals instead. Okay, and we do have a movie on our YouTube channel on subtotals versus subledgers on the YouTube channel. Okay. So that's it, folks. I mean, again, I said this probably wouldn't take too terribly long on this. There isn't much to setting up those custom account groups. Of course, one account can belong to as many custom account groups as we wish. We're not restricted by that. So if I go, okay, I want my office expenses to be also linked to, say, my trustees accounts, trustees group, I can still come in here and go, okay, office expense, choose office expense, and add that to my trustees grouping as well. So there's no restriction in terms of whether an account can be linked to one custom account group or multiples. Sorry, I should add that in there, that little caveat. But that's it. Okay, so I'm done with what I'm talking about here. Let me see if there's any questions coming in. And it doesn't look like we've got anything in there yet. I must be doing a pretty good job or thorough job on that today. But I'll give folks a couple minutes here or a few seconds here to type in if there are any questions on this. But again, if you've seen what you came to see and you don't have any questions, again, you're welcome to exit the webinar. And we hope to see you at another Church Windows webinar event. All right, well, I'm not seeing any questions coming in here. Looks like most everybody has already left the event. So I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar for everybody. We hope it's been helpful, and we look forward to seeing you at another webinar event. Thanks so much. Take care. Bye-bye.